Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and this time I made sure that all of my equipment is working properly, which is nice. It's a good upgrade from last time. So hopefully you're all doing well. I wanted to make a bit of a follow-up video to the What's Next chat from the developers for Total War Warhammer 3, because there was a little bit of information I missed that's just worth covering. And I also wanted to have a little bit of a follow-up chat on the whole situation revolving around the Fimir Noble, because I've been just kind of looking at the feedback, and what we'll do for this little video is that we will go to the comment section of the video, and I'm going to kind of go through them to cover some of what people said as far as like some of the counter arguments or some of the concerns and things, just because it's something I think would be interesting to discuss. But first thing is that Creative Assembly actually kind of snuck in a little bit of bonus information about 6.2, which is the patch that is supposed to be coming sometime next month. And that is actually this right up here, which is that the, if I can angle my hand correctly over that way, cool stuff, that we are getting 2 new units, which is a nice surprise. We are getting, in 6.2, Blood Knights with sword and shield, and then the Hobgoblin Bolt Thrower. So, frankly, just a bit of a random new set of units, which is quite nice. The Hobgoblin Bolt Thrower, I am particularly looking forward to. I'm someone that very much likes to build thematic armies. I like my armies to have a composition that's built around certain ideas. So, you know, theming a Hobgoblin army, for instance. Like when I play Chaos Dwarfs, every single time I play Chaos Dwarfs, I will always be pretty aggressive about getting my hands on good old Gorda's Backstabber. And I will throw him into an army, either if I'm playing, well, regardless of who I'm playing, you know, I will throw him in an army led by an Overseer, and just let it go hog wild, being essentially a pure Hobgoblin army with the exception of the Lord. Well, no, that's true. I'll usually have a Lord, a Wizard, and then everything else is Hobgoblins. So being able to get Hobgoblin Bolt Throwers is, for me, awesome, because now I can have Hobgoblin with siege weapons. One of the things that's actually really nice about this is, you know, obviously we don't know what the future holds for Total War Warhammer as far as how much more content we're getting. It's a mystery. That being said, I'm pretty optimistic about it. You know, as far as like all of my feelers in the ground go, there's no end in sight, and there's plenty more to do. But that being said, I don't know how broad the future is, because I would really love to see, you know, a playable Naga of Koresh, the Hobgoblin Khanate, etc. But I don't know if we're going to get those. Those are factions that it's looking likely that we will have added to the old world. And if they exist in the old world, they obviously exist in the modern Warhammer Fantasy timeline. Now, I don't know if Games Workshop will see it that way as well, because there's also kind of the leap of, if something exists in the old world, can we have it in Total War? And the answer seems to be mostly no for the moment. Otherwise, we would have those Necrolith Bone Dragons and the Lore of Trolls and everything, but we don't have those. So, with that in mind, the reason I bring that up is that the Hobgoblin Bolt Thrower is a very exciting addition for if there are modders out there who want to follow like in the steps of the Naga of Koresh guys, and someone wants to make the Hobgoblin Khanate. Because one of the really core pieces that is necessary is the Bolt Thrower. Because according to what little tidbits and stories we have about the Hobgoblin Khanate, which I think for the sake of just, if you'd like to watch it, I'll include a link down below to the Lorebeards episode we did on the Hobgoblin Khanate. But the bolt throwers are really critical to a lot of their design, where there are myths and legends about how the Hobgoblin Khanate has these like movable cities where they have these great caravans with like these large platforms that are pulled by dozens, if not tens of dozens of wolves, giant wolves that are roaming across the eastern steppe, and they have these great mobile platforms that their little kind of like tent cities are built on, and that these platforms have artillery towers on them essentially. So they have little parts of the platforms that have all these different bolt throwers on them that are able to shoot at enemies as it continues moving around. Which this is just another piece for anyone that is hoping to do that in the end. I do look forward to seeing the model. I'm curious if it's going to look notably different than the greenskin one. I hope it does have like a unique amount of personality and flair to it, as opposed to just being like the same model but with hobgoblins screwing it. So I do look forward to seeing what it looks like, because the greenskin one is very orcs and goblins, where it's got like the orc looking like metal jaw kind of design on the bottom, and then it it's very ramshackle and such. I'm hoping the hobgoblin one will look a little bit more expertly put together as opposed to the ramshackle attempts of regular goblins. But beyond that, we also, of course, and the other thing I'll say, sorry, the last thing I'll say is that it's also nice for the Chaos Dwarves, because it means as the Chaos Dwarves, you have access to a siege weapon or a long-range artillery piece that does not require you to increase your number of like how many war machines you can take. So you can have infinite hobgoblin bolt throwers without having to spend any resources in your campaign for like unlocking how many you're allowed to have, like you do with your more sophisticated war machines. So I do think it's a very nice addition to the roster. Obviously, for people that only care about min-maxing, it's going to fall off pretty quick in your campaign compared to your more elite engines. But if you like thematic builds, or you just like having more variety available to you earlier in the campaign, I really think it's a great addition. Then we have the Blood Knights with swords and shields. So this one's actually kind of interesting to me. It's not one I ever expected to get, just because it just didn't occur to me. The idea of Blood Knights getting a variant, it makes sense when I really think about it, because it is not unusual for us in Total War to have, your sword and board versus your lance, and that's become something that's been more and more dramatic as it's gone to, your lances tend to focus more on obviously a higher charge bonus and a more aggressive stat line. But we've even seen a lot of rosters that they tend to be more of your anti-large variant, which is how Blood Dragons or Blood Knights have been traditionally used. But Blood Knights with Sword and Shield will be very, very nice, because they'll be a more generalist unit, more than likely. I'll be surprised if they have anti-infantry, but I won't be surprised to see that they lose the anti-large. But in exchange, gaining significantly higher defenses and being made much better for sustained combat. Because Blood Knights are a fantastic unit. They're very elite. But because of the lances, you are generally punished for not, effectively cycle charging with them and making sure they get favorable engagements and pulling out, once they've dealt kind of their initial damage. Blood Knights do in modern Total War now have the vampiric trait, or the hunger rather. So they heal as they continue fighting in combat. So I think having a unit of them now with sword and shield is going to be actually a very, very nice addition to how vampire counts tend to like to play, which is to get stuck in and to grind. These are going to be far better for that kind of more stereotypical vampire count play, which is exciting, and of course gives you a little bit more. I'm curious what we're going to see happen to the Blood Knights, the regular Blood Knights, the ones that have the lances, what they're going to do to kind of separate them to make the two variants feel, different. I think this actually could allow the lance variant to become even more aggressive, to trade a little bit of that sustainability for more kind of hammer play, as opposed to trying to be a hammer and anvil simultaneously, being able to focus a little more. But beyond that, last thing we'll be doing for this video is I just want to kind of go over some of the comments of this yes, I like my own videos, why not? I like me, I like myself. We're gonna go over the comments in this video where I was very stupid and spent a good 20 minutes without any sound watching while reacting to a video, because I'm very dumb. But nonetheless, so there are a couple of interesting ones that I wanted to pull up. So generally we had a mix of some people agreeing, some people disagreeing, but the big one that caught my attention was, see if I can find it, sale mounts, oh, okay, well, okay, so I will address this one actually, because this one's actually kind of interesting. So Sweet Taters 4583 asked, do I think that, I don't know why I didn't like this, boop, is the fact that they added the Fimir Noble a death sentence for us getting Muna Mim? I don't think so. So for those unaware, I've done a like a proposal video of Norsca, where I've done two. The second one isn't out yet. It's about to come out. It's just finishing being edited, but it's a very long video. But the first one was all about like monstrous creatures. So it was purely about like Fimir monsters and like werebearers and stuff. And in that video, the legendary lord that I proposed that I would really like to see for Norsca, and I still would, is Muna Mim. And Muna Mim is what's known as a Fimir matriarch, or in the tongue of the Fimir themselves, they call them Fimir mirgs. And I don't think the Fimir Noble being added has anything to do with killing Muna Mim off. What I will say is I don't think that Norsca is going to get another big DLC like this, but I also just don't think these big DLCs are going to be the thing anymore. I think with the Chaos Quadrilogy, so to speak, coming to an end, or actually be not a quadrilogy, but a tetralogy. But anyway, I think this is the last of its kind for the foreseeable future. Because I think while these DLCs have been very, very successful, a lot of Creative Assembly, or a lot of the community, I should say, has, and you can see it right now, if you just go on the Reddit or the forums or whatever, a lot of the community really, really wishes that CA would kind of change gears for a little bit, at least, and go into a format of making more DLCs that have less in them, rather than making less DLCs that have more in them, which isn't a bad thing. Like, it's not, one system is not better than the other. They have different advantages and disadvantages. You know, if CA does like a series of many DLCs, they could theoretically get out 4 to 6 in a year, maybe even more, depending on how small they are. And that would be really nice for people that like to have really consistent reasons to come back to the game, and could allow for some just, you know, nice cheap DLCs, you know, in that kind of like $4 to $15 range. Could be really nice. I'm working on some videos right now about some new types of DLCs that I'm going to be really, really pushing for the community, because I think we could have DLCs where it's like just a character and like a couple of units, or, you know, like a small squad of heroes, or, you know, like a little mini thing that focuses on like a specific idea. So with that in mind, do I think that Muna Mim is completely dead because we got the Fimir Noble? Absolutely not, especially because she is not a Fimir Noble, she is a matriarch. And it could be that CA has plans for matriarchs in the future. You know, when I've talked about the Fimir Noble, the whole caveat to my Fimir Noble discussion is that I think the Fimir Noble should be a lord instead of a hero, but that's only if CA has no plans to bring a generic Fimir Mirg into the game as a generic hero or a generic lord, because they're the top of the Fimir clans, right? So your Fimir clans, they're matriarchal. So you have your matriarch, and then you have like your noble, and then your warriors, and then your churls and stuff. And the Bale Fiends are like up in the noble-ish tier. So the lord level should be Mirgs. However, Mirgs or matriarchs are very, very rare. There's only one per clan, and there's not a ton of Fimir clans in the world. And so the matriarchs could very well and the matriarchs also don't have like an easily accessible playable thing. Apologies for the phone. So like there's no, like, the Fimir Noble exists in tabletop. Like it was a thing in the Monstrous Arcanum, so it's super easy to adapt. There's even some like cool artwork of it. So CA took that and they're like, we're gonna make this into a character, easy peasy, great. The matriarch does not have that advantage. The only even remotely recent piece of artwork we have of a Fimir matriarch is from the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game with Muna Mim. She is the only matriarch art that's out there that's been made in like the last 30 years, because the other Fimir matriarch stuff was written back in like the late 80s, which was a very long time ago, because 30 years ago was still only the 90s. But that being said, because of that, I personally doubt that Creative Assembly plans to do generic Fimir matriarchs. I don't think that's what they are going to do. I think that the Fimir Noble is the last generic Fimir character we're getting. And that's fine, but I think he should be a lord. And I've explained my whole reasons for doing that in the other video, but just to sum it up very, very quickly, right here is that the idea of that as it currently stands, if the Fimir Noble comes in as a hero, we would only have 2 generic lords for Norsca, which isn't enough in my opinion. And it's a human fighter guy and a human wizard guy will be the only 2 lord options, which is a bummer. I don't think that's particularly exciting for a faction that has a lot of monsters and a lot of monstrous infantry. There should be a monstrous infantry lord that allows you to run armies that are more thematic. If you have an army of Fimir, Fimir units, Werekin units, your frost dragons, your mammoths or your manticores, like you have all these crazy monsters and stuff, and you want to have a monster lord, you can't do that with their current plan. But if they were to bump up the Fimir Noble to being a lord, that immediately solves the problem. You can now have a fully thematic monster build. And now you have 3 different styles of lords running around, which is far more appropriate. As we go down here a little bit, the big one that I saw, which I wanted to actually pull it up and like be able to be like, this is someone talking about this thing, but they were all at the top the last time I looked at this, and it seems that they have sunk very far down. Where are the people that were disagreeing with me? They were all over the place yesterday, or like 2 days ago. Oh man, I should have, if I was dumb, or if I was smart, I would have made sure to find the comment that I wanted. I would have made sure to find it before doing this. So I I am not good at my job. So tell you what, I'm just gonna paraphrase, I guess, somebody instead of saying it, reading off a direct thing, which is a bummer. Okay, cool. Well, I can't find it. I'll just paraphrase. So you can find it a lot on the Reddit and somewhere in this comment section, though I can't figure out where the hell it is, because I'm just blind, I guess. But the big thing that I see brought up is that there have been people that have argued that the Norskins would not, here I can actually switch back to this view, that the Norskins would not follow a Fimir noble. So like the Fimir, I've seen the argument that a Fimir noble should not be the lord for Norsca because the humans in the Norscan roster would not follow a Fimir noble into battle. So it shouldn't be allowed. And I have two main counter arguments to that because I don't think that's a good argument. The number one reason is that in Total War, that kind of logic doesn't matter. And it hasn't mattered leading up to this point, and I don't think it should suddenly matter now. And what I mean by that is that we have several lords in the game that can lead armies that have no business leading armies. A good example, or good examples, are the Dwarf Demon Slayer. Canonically, and in tabletop, the Dwarf Demon Slayer could not be a lord. The only time, or could not be a general. The only time they could lead your armies was if you were running a specific type of army that was like all slayers. So if you were running a specific like Kadak Slayer army of Kadak Kadron army, you could have a Demon Slayer lead the army because he was leading a very specific thematic build. But in Total War, that's frankly too restrictive and gets in the way of what we worship, which is the rule of cool. And so they throw that out the window and say, you know what, screw it, Demon Slayers can lead armies. Same thing for like the Master Engineer of the Empire. The Master Engineer was A, not a thing in tabletop, and B, literally some inventive nerd from like the Engineers College or the Black Powder School in or the Engineers College in Altdorf or the Black Powder School in Nuln would not have the authority in the vast majority of realistic circumstances to lead an army, particularly an army that has like nobles in it, which the vast majority of knights are noble-blooded, and like having like the cults behind them and all this stuff. The idea of some engineer leading them is absurd. Like there would only be very rare specific types of armies that he would be able to corral behind him. Another example being things like the Kroxigor. The ancient Kroxigor, not a thing. You couldn't even have Kroxigor heroes in tabletop, much less lords, much less as generals. Kroxigors are not generals. They don't have the mindset for that. Saurus are natural generals. Skinks make decent, like, little tacticians, so they can be kind of generals in a pinch outside of rare cases like Tehenowin. And Slann are obviously amazing tacticians and generals because they're just so intelligent. But Kroxigors they're brutes, to be honest. They're builders. The idea of a Kroxigor leading an army is asinine. But we have it in Total War because rule of cool. Now, granted, I personally was not a huge fan of that because I think the Kroxigor Ancient should have been a hero, not a lord. I still want my Kroxigor hero, but that's because I want to be able to run pure Kroxigor armies that have heroes in them. But nonetheless, we have this all over the place. The Skaven Master Assassins cannot be generals. They should not be generals of armies unless that army is a pure assassin army. So if it's like completely Clan-Eshin and it's made up entirely of assassins and like the sneaky elements of Clan-Eshin, then a Master Assassin can lead that particular strike force. But outside of that, no, a Master Assassin should never be a general and shouldn't be a lord. But in Total War, they are, because rule of cool. And you could also argue because there's a realistic circumstance in which they would lead a type of army. So like a Demon Slayer. could lead an army of slayers. Therefore, it could make sense they're a lord. An ancient Kroxigor could be leading like a big horde of Kroxigors and creatures in a part of Lustria. So sure, why not? A master engineer from Nuln could be leading like an army of, you know, regular state troops backed up by war machines and engineering marvels. Sure. A master assassin could be leading a Clanesian group. Sure. And by all of that logic, based on how the Norscan roster is built, could a Fimir noble be a general? Yes, obviously, because he could lead an army of Fimir. A Fimir noble could lead the two variants we have of Fimir troops, could lead the Fimir Balefiends, could lead the various monsters that the Fimir are able to bring to their cause, things like the Frost Dragons, and things like all the other like gribbly beasties, you know, and the trolls and all that other stuff. The idea that the humans of Norsca wouldn't just like follow a Fimir, even that I kind of take issue with. Like from a lore standpoint, chaos worshippers, especially in the north, so your northern tribesmen, they respect strength. They respect power. When you have the dynamic of the Fimir and the Norscans, or your chaos tribesmen, and you're figuring out why they don't tend to work together often, it's not because the humans don't want to work with the Fimir. It's actually the other way around, where the Fimir don't like to work with humans. That's why they don't tend to work together. But because in the story, in the lore that we have, the whole reason the Fimir are in the Monstrous Arcanum is because, and the Storm Magic book, is because the Chaos Sorcerers of the Warriors of Chaos and the various tribesmen will make pacts with the Fimir to say, hey, you guys should come like hang out with us and help us on these raids or help us do things. And like y'all could be like this super powerful contingent in the center of our army. And the Fimir will begrudgingly answer the call, either because like there's a pact that compels them or because they come to some form of arrangement. But if a Fimir noble comes stomping out on like one of their death marches, or they're just raiding out from one of their towers in the marshes, and they come across a group of Northmen who are led by a chieftain, and that chieftain gets in a duel with a Fimir noble, and the Fimir noble more than likely absolutely beats the tar out of him, just crushes him, the Northmen will go, well, shit, that guy's super powerful and strong. That guy's in charge. We have so many cases of the Northmen worshiping really and following very bizarre creatures, where they're worshiping the likes of like Kolek Suneater as a mountain god, or they follow various dragons, or they follow like weird creatures that are like spirits out in the world that don't even like them. The idea that the idea that the northern tribes are very picky about who it is they follow in order to survive is no, that's not how they work. It's just not how they work. A Fimir noble leading a combined force of the various chaos groups, including Fimir, trolls, demonic entities, and Northmen, is not that strange. It's just not. It's not that it can't happen. It's just that it's not a story that's been examined. The Fimir are some of the best when it comes to being demonologists. They know how to bind demons and to force demons to do what they want them to do. They know how to take these favored entities of the gods, these representatives, these heralds, and to bind them. They are able to wield horrific monsters like basilisks and finworms and trolls and all sorts of other nasty gribblies. So the idea that like humans just wouldn't follow it's ridiculous. Like that there's no good evidence for that, other than the Fimir do not like to tolerate humans, generally speaking. Most Fimir see humans as upstarts. they see them as basically replacing them and taking their place as the dark gods favored. And because of that, they're incredibly envious of humans and tend to despise them because humanity is what has led to their own decline. But does that mean that there's no circumstance where Fimir would work with humans? Well, the answer is obviously no, because the Fimir are part of the Norscan roster. And if you have Fimir in your roster, then you can have Fimir leading your roster. So hopefully that is enough of an argument, just because I've seen that kind of counter argument. And while I'm totally up for counter arguments, I think that particular one is just really weak. Now, if you just don't like the Fimir Noble as a lord, or you think that he's better as a hero for whatever reason, that's totally viable. I can't argue with that. That's reasonable takes, because that's just opinion. But when someone tries to use the lore to be like, well, this thing can't happen, it's like, okay, hold on. Just because it has not obviously happened does not mean it cannot happen. Let's delve in and examine this a bit. So hopefully that can dispel that, because that's not a good counter argument. But you may have some counter arguments that are perfectly reasonable. I still very much hold to the idea that I think they should be lords. Even if you go back and watch my original Monsters of Norsca, or I think I called it Tribe of the Baelai video, which I'll also link down below alongside the other one I said I would do. Oh, the Hobgoblin Khanate Lorebeards. I'll also include the Fimir Lorebeards. So I'll have all three of those down below if you want to check those out. I highly recommend all three of them. Totally not biased, but anyway, yeah. So this was supposed to be like a quick 10-minute thing, and that turned into 30 minutes because I can't shut the fuck up. So I hope you all are having a very lovely day. I intend on streaming today because I'm trying to fix an issue where when I stream, my computer sometimes just reboots, and I'm not sure what's causing that. I think I might have fixed it, so we're gonna find out today. But I hope you all have a lovely day. I'll be seeing you around. That Mortals of Norsca proposal, which totally doesn't have Sail the Faithless as the Legendary Lord thing, and I made that video before Skulls. I want to make it really clear that I called it before it happened. I didn't copy Skulls. I was ahead of the game, but that video should be out hopefully in the coming days. So yeah, thanks for watching.